Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, and Merry Christmas. Today we are taking a look at the Camping World Bowl, as number 15 Notre Dame will take on the Cyclones of Iowa State. And right off the bat, I have to say it feels kind of weird to see a top 15 Notre Dame team who finished 10-2 with their only losses to Georgia and Michigan playing in a non-New Year's 6 bowl game. I'm sure many of my Fighting Irish fans out there will say that the Irish got snubbed when their bowl selection. I have to say that I agree with them. I feel like they deserved a New Year's 6 bowl spot. But there's nothing they can do about it now. They have to prepare for a solid Iowa State squad led by Matt Campbell, who led the Cyclones to yet another successful season, a winning record, and another postseason performance, another postseason appearance. But it was a fairly disappointing season, and a year that many expected Iowa State to win 8, maybe 9 games, compete for a spot in the Big 12 championship game, and many thought them to be the third best team in the Big 12. They went just 7-5. But they can still clinch their third straight 8-win season for the first time since 1976 through 1978. So Campbell's still doing some great things in Ames. Even after the disappointing season, there's still a lot to play for in a game like this. The first thing that I looked at when I saw this game was the quarterback battle and how great it's going to be down in Orlando, as you've got Ian Book of Notre Dame taking on Brock Purdy of Iowa State. Two phenomenal quarterbacks, leaders of these football teams, and major reason for each of these teams' success. Ian Book, over 2,700 yards on the year, 33 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and has been able to show off a little bit of his mobility, has shown that he's got some dual threat capability in him. Brock Purdy putting up way better stats than Book when it comes to just the numbers. 3,700 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. So way more yards than Ian Book, but more interceptions and less touchdowns. But when you look at it, you've got two great quarterbacks here leading dynamic offenses that average well over 30 points per game. Notre Dame, 37.1 points per game. Iowa State, 34.1 points per game. So I'm really looking forward to this. This is a game that could be relatively high scoring, a game where I expect to see points scored, and a lot of it's going to be in part of the way these quarterbacks play. Notre Dame offensively way more balanced than Iowa State. 252.6 passing yards per game and 176.6 rushing yards per game. And I think that's something that will give the Fighting Irish kind of an upper hand in this one. Somewhere that they do own an edge is they've got a very experienced senior quarterback in Ian Book, but he's got Tony Jones Jr. at running back. And he has played extremely well all season long. And that's something that could give the Cyclones a bit of an issue, is the fact of how balanced Notre Dame is and how well they can mix it up on offense. For Iowa State, they average over 315 passing yards per game, but they do have 140.3 rushing yards per game on the ground. And that's led by Breece Hall, 842 yards and 9 touchdowns on the year. So they can mix it up a little bit as well, but to me, not nearly as balanced as the Fighting Irish. But regardless, these offenses are going to be clicking, they're going to be thriving, they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. So in a game like that, as we've said multiple times over the course of these bowl predictions, which defense is going to step up? Which defense is going to be able to make a play when you've got two very dynamic offenses going at it? And you can bet your money, and just looking at the stats and from the way these two teams have played, that Notre Dame owns the defensive edge. There's no doubt about it. Fighting Irish, despite losing 2 of their biggest games to Georgia and Michigan, the Georgia game very close, as we can all remember, is very underrated. This defense, very, very underrated. They've got a phenomenal pass rush. Just go back and watch that Virginia game, a team that went to the ACC title game, and how well Notre Dame was at getting to the quarterback. They only allow 18.7 points per game and allow just 163.7 passing yards and 160.6 rushing yards. And that's the number that concerns me more. The passing yards number, outstanding. The rushing yards, 160.6, a little bit of a cause of concern, but as many will point out, they have played some very run-heavy teams. Allowed a lot of yards to New Mexico, allowed a lot of rushing yards to Navy, even though they annihilated the midshipmen. So in games like that, Michigan, a team that dominated Notre Dame on the ground in a game that was extremely wet, heavy rain, a lot of that contributing to these high numbers that Notre Dame's allowing on the ground. But the biggest stat to me is not the yards per game or the points per game they're allowing. It's the amount of turnovers that Notre Dame forces. Usually more teams have more interceptions than they do fumbles in terms of being forced. Notre Dame's a little bit of the opposite. Fighting Irish have forced 17 fumbles this season. 17 fumbles they have recovered this season. To me, that's an amazing stat. That's unbelievable. So secondary is solid, but this defensive line and the ability to, whether they're strip sacking the quarterback or whether they're just ripping the ball out from the running back or wide receivers, the amount of fumbles that Notre Dame has recovered, to me, is extremely impressive and is probably eye-opening and a cause of concern for the Cyclones. Their ball security is going to be at a maximum and be of the utmost importance in a game like this, in a game against a solid Fighting Irish defense. For Iowa State, their defense not bad at all. 25.3 points per game they're allowing, and they only allow 133.8 rushing yards per game. So that's not a bad mark, and maybe Tony Jones doesn't get going as much in this game, but Notre Dame relies more on the pass anyways. But I will say that in their season finale, the Cyclones did allow 231 rushing yards to Kansas State. So even though the numbers aren't that high in terms of the average per game, the performance they had against Kansas State was not great against the run. They lost that game by 10. That's something I guarantee you Notre Dame has studied the film on, and they're going to kind of draw up their game plan surrounding that a little bit. Expect Tony Jones to get quite a bit of work in this Camping World Bowl. The biggest X factor I have in this game does not come from the Cyclones. It does come from Notre Dame, and it's probably not even a big of an X factor because of how big a role he plays on the team, but it's wide receiver Chase Claypool and how well he has played this season. And one of the things that's going to be the biggest X factor for me is not his 891 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns, but his experience and his leadership that he brings to the team. In a bowl game like this, you see a lot of players that sit out games. And right now, as of this filming, Claypool is not going to sit out. I don't think many Notre Dame players will be. It's a lot of pride and a lot at stake in a game like this. A lot of NFL draft stock to improve in a game like this. But his leadership and his experience in big games from the college football playoff last year to other postseason games will be very useful. And being Ian Book's top target will be extremely useful as well. So he is going to be an X factor in this one. If they can take him away, if Iowa State can shut him down and make him not much of a factor, then this Notre Dame offense could struggle a little bit. So Chase Claypool, my X factor in this Camping World Bowl, a major player to really watch out for, and one that I am rooting for to have a great final last game as a member of this Fighting Irish football team. So in this Camping World Bowl, one that has seen some great matchups in recent years, maybe not necessarily by the score, but basically by the matchup, who are we picking? Who are we going with? Well, I can tell you that one coach, whether it's Matt Campbell or Brian Kelly, will be going home with a winning record in bowl games. Both of these coaches are at 500 at their respective schools. Matt Campbell is just 1-1 in bowl games, beating Memphis 2 years ago, falling to Washington State by 2 last year. Brian Kelly 4-4. So one of these coaches is going home with a winning record in the postseason at each of their programs. It's been said that the stage has been too big for Notre Dame and that they always choke in major games. You look at the college football playoff last year where they got annihilated by Clemson. You look at their New Year's Six or BCS caliber bowl games where they have struggled and not been able to win. You look at the 2012 National Championship where they were annihilated by Alabama. So they always say the stage is too big for Notre Dame, that they always choke and they're not able to win the big game. And that's been a major frustration for Fighting Irish fans under Brian Kelly. But Notre Dame does play well in games like this. Not really a huge bowl game. The eyes of the nation aren't necessarily going to be on this game, especially on a day where the college football playoff is being played. People will be anticipating those matchups more so than this one. And I like Notre Dame to get the job done here. And I'm not solely basing it off of the previous performances in their big games. Part of it is the reason, but I also am picking Notre Dame here because of their solid core of seniors, a group of seniors that have experience in the postseason consistently, a group of seniors that have played so well for this Fighting Irish squad. I do believe that Notre Dame owns the defensive edge, something that will be huge going up against a very potent Iowa State offense. So in a relatively high-scoring game, the defense is going to have to come through, and I like Notre Dame's defense more so than I like Iowa State's. Notre Dame wins the Camping World Bowl and wins 11 games for the second year in a row and for the second time in the past 6 years. People are frustrated with Brian Kelly, I know, but you can't complain after what has happened the past 2 seasons. But this will give the Fighting Irish some momentum going into a major 2020 year, a big 2020 season, one where they will have to replace a lot of key players at some key positions. You're going to lose Ian Book. You're going to lose some key wide receivers. So it's going to be a make-or-break year for Brian Kelly to see how well they do. But better to go into next year with a win, carrying some bowl momentum, than to end with a loss. Credit to Matt Campbell. He just signed a huge extension for the Cyclones. Future is very bright in Ames, but their season falls and ends with a loss to a very talented Notre Dame squad down in Orlando. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here on YouTube. Make sure to like this video and check out everything we have for you in the description below. The spread pick for the Camping World Bowl, as well as every other bowl game, can be found over at thegridironexpert.com, along with countless other college football content and offers. So don't miss out on any of that. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And have a Merry Christmas. And we'll see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.